Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Walk the Block, where we are navigating digital finance. This is episode number 4. It is January 20th, 2025, aka the day that President Trump was inaugurated. He made many bold promises during the 2024 election cycle. We're going to cover all of those today, and we're going to cover Bitcoin hitting a new all-time high as well. And on top of that, we're not like saying we're big Trump guys necessarily, but the man is the main character right now, and he launched a meme coin over the weekend that did so well, it actually broke the chart pattern on Solana compared to everything else. And people were trying to figure out what it was, what it isn't, and we'll talk about all of that tonight. I am your host, Zenith, otherwise known as Zenith DI on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me over there. And then I am coming back from a long weekend in Las Vegas, actually, hanging out with the Moon Gang. So shout out to Charlie Miguel for throwing on an amazing meetup. Shout out to everybody I met out there, including meeting up with some old friends of ours like Boogie and Twinkie. Absolute pleasure to hang out with them. And I got to meet Black Label Expat in the flesh. That was sick. So we got all that coming up tonight. That's who I am. My excellent co-host, Mr. J. You were up first. How you doing, buddy?
I was getting I was cracking up because you were like, I am Zenith, known as Zenith. I thought you were just gonna you were just gonna leave it at that.
Double
like,
intro myself.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's a Zenith. Yeah, I'm like, okay.
Start talking in third person or something over here.
Bro, I'm doing well, man. The last Telegram exclusive that we had was on Friday. The entire team was on there, and my goodness, when because on the Friday stream, I was talking about, look, when the charts were telling me to be short-term bearish, I was short-term bearish. And then when the charts were telling me there's a lot of things that were invalidated for the bears, and now I'm flipping short-term bullish, I was like, all right, here's the compelling evidence for why. And then lo and behold, like obviously there was a little bit of push from DJT to send us into a new all-time high for Bitcoin and Solana. Congrats for the Solana holders out there. So we did get a little bit of help over the weekend because it was so uncharacteristic, right? Very rarely do you get moves like that over the weekend. But I think it wouldn't be such an unreasonable expectation to have that if we were going to have a weekend like we did, it would happen during the one before inauguration day, right? And that's exactly what we got. So it's been a crazy past few days. I know people were a little bit bummed that he didn't mention crypto during his inauguration speech. I'm sure we'll go over the details and speculate as to why. But I think this is just the beginning, right? Day one. And I am very much looking for a 2025 for crypto that is a lot more open and friendly here in the United States, right? First Bitcoin president, entire regulatory bodies that have basically turned over staff to like very anti-crypto people to very now pro-crypto people. So there's a lot of things to look over, to look forward to during this post-halving year.
Excellent. Love to hear it. All right, Mr. Tracker. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man. Yeah, I thought the day was pretty good. I had to look up, though, because they kept saying how cold it was. And if you do look at it, Trump today, it was 27 degrees versus in the other inaugural days, it was 42, 48, 45. So I guess there is justification for them to do it indoors. I thought, honestly, it was a good excuse for them, for the security intel to be making their life a lot easier and less stressful by having it indoors. That was my first thoughts, but it is definitely 20 degrees colder than most of the other inaugural days. But I think that was just a blessing for the security intel team. With that being said, I think the funniest thing that I took away from the entire inauguration was when he was being sworn in and all the speeches that he was giving there in the round area there with all the major players, the people who were sitting versus everybody who's standing. It just spoke volumes, and that kind of sums up politics. More or less, and I thought that kind of did a really good job doing that. Yeah, a lot to talk about today. I'm excited to get into it, and yeah, the coins, the Trump coin, I think is interesting. We were talking earlier and before the show launched. We'd like to get into a little bit of that. I think people are trying to label something that's not really what it is. We can talk about that. We can get into the TAs. I think Jay has been all over the ratio trades left and right, so I'm excited to get into some of that stuff as well, and some of the short coverings, the short activity with the Ethereum side. So looking forward to it.
Love to hear it. All right. Well, as per usual, we are going to open up the show with a little bit of technical analysis. So, Mr. J, if you don't mind, pull up them charts and we'll start sharing it all around these parts. We're going to start off with Bitcoin today. We're muted, my friend.
There you go. Charts are up. Sorry about that.
Boom.
Cool.
All good.
All right. So a few key things that I really want people to consider that happened over the weekend, right? To keep things very simple at first, right? Let's go over the 60-day cycles. And really what happened during the move over this weekend basically eliminated our worst case scenario for Bitcoin, right? Because up until this point, we still had two prevailing theories as far as cycles, right? We were either playing with a right translated cycle or a potential left translated cycle, right? And we were leaning a bit heavier towards the left translated cycle. But the events that occurred over the last few days just basically eliminated that for the bears, right? The fact that we took, and this was even before the shenanigans with the Trump meme coin, right? Even before that happened, we had taken the prior cycle, the day 7 cycle high, which is what we were considering for the left translated cycle theory, right? And then over the weekend, we basically shot up to a new all-time high. And so all of the different bearish scenarios that I had been basically working on for the past few weeks, right, had been invalidated within the span of the 3 days, right? And I'm totally fine with that. Like I always tell people, there are when it's time to be bearish, you're bearish. But when not only the narratives and the technicals are showing you, right, especially when certain invalidations are hit on your charts, right? When those things are combining together, right, to tell you that it's time to flip bullish, then you flip bullish, right? And we obviously did so at a very opportune time. For those of you who are in the Telegram, it's not any surprise to you, because when some of these invalidations were hit, I was like, look, personally speaking, I'm going a little bit heavier into my altcoin plays that I want to accumulate more, that I have high conviction in. And obviously the result is as you see it on the charts, right? And so as it stands, right, when we are considering these 60-day cycles, right, we are currently on day number, we are day number 8 of the new 60-day cycle with a high here on day number 7. So a few things of good news here. Number one, because we took the cycle high and we hit a new all-time high, what basically happened is now you open up the rest of the month of January, and you open up the entire month of February open for interpretation, right? You could either, right now we are bullish, but what I'm saying when I say that we open up for interpretation is, right, now depending on how the wind shifts, right, now it's fair game. Do we continue the momentum and have a right translated cycle, or do we get fudded into a left translated cycle? Right. So now it's open for interpretation because we are early and we are only on day number 8. Right. So good news, right? Because at the very minimum, we eliminated the very strong case for a left translated cycle last week. Now, number 2, with the new all-time high that we made on Sunday, right? We hit 109,000 plus change. This now technically brings us officially to a right translated 4-year cycle. So rejoice, 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 right? I know I tend to get pedantic when it comes to numbers, right? I was telling people we technically already have a right translated cycle when we made that high in December, because that's more than 2 years post our bear market low. So technically it is 2 years, right? But now the people who are like, well, you can only really call it a right translated 4-year cycle if we get a high past, the halving year. Now you have it, right? So everything that happened basically like within the last week or so has just now shifted the narrative pretty much in favor for the bulls, right? So that's what we have in terms of these 60-day cycles, right? What can we expect? Well, we can expect, if we are looking for a high, right, for a right translated cycle to occur sometime, right, around day 40 or so at the earliest, right? And you expect this cycle to extend all the way up until, right? If we were looking at a traditional cycle count, we are going to look for a cycle low sometime at the very early point of March, right? Yeah, actually, no, sometime during the middle of March, right? So we're looking for our cycle low to come in sometime in the middle of March. And if we were to expect something very similar to what happened last year, right, during the halving year, then we are probably going to get a run up during sometime late March to early April, and then head for that cycle low sometime soon after, right? Sell in May, go away, etc., etc. Right, so that's what you can expect in terms of time, right? But right now we are leaning bullish because we are pushing to new all-time highs, right? The only thing that would lead us to be bearish is if we swept the cycle low, right? Our last cycle low at about $89,000 for Bitcoin. That's really the only time where you can flip bearish, right? Well, not really the only time. We have some more invalidations that we'll go over, right? But as of now, the bulls have pretty solid control of the market. Right. So let's go over. Let's get a little bit more granular and consider what's going on the chart for Bitcoin. Right. We have a few bullish scenarios that we are working with. First one, right, is a double 1-2 scenario. We have a wave 1 and 2 here in green already completed. Right. And then we are working on the purple wave count to complete that green wave 3 in a larger degree, right? Something that looks like this, right? Now, here's what would invalidate this scenario. If you take a fib retracement taken from the start of your purple wave 1, right, to the end, then you can see that our invalidation here for this double 1-2 scenario is the 886 level at 98,192. You hit that 86 level, and you can bet that we are probably going to head to the downside and sweep this low here at 97,228. Right. So that is your first bullish scenario and your first invalidation. Your second bullish scenario is a more traditional, right, 5-wave sequence completed, right, in purple to finish that green wave 1. And now we are looking for our wave 2 to complete before eventually continuation to the upside. Your invalidation for this particular scenario is as follows. Taken from the start to the end, right? Oops, sorry, that doesn't go there. That goes there right there. All right, from the start to the end of your green wave 1 and your invalidation for the scenario, same thing here. The 886 sitting at $91,065. You hit the 886, then you can bet that you're more than likely to sweep this prior cycle low at $89,000. That's when you can get bearish, right? So before we get to that scenario, you have several invalidations that the bears must go through before you can convince me to flip bearish once again. However, like I always say when we go over an analysis, we need both a bullish and bearish scenario. So we just went over the bullish scenario. Let's go over the bearish one. Every single analyst must have both a bullish and bearish scenario. Right? The good thing about the bearish scenario is it's only bearish scenario for the short term before continuation to the upside, right? So if we have a 5-wave sequence completed here, right? You're waiting for your wave 2 to come in, right? In an A, B, and a 5-wave sequence down for your C, which we are currently observing. All right? 5-wave sequence down for your C before continuation to the upside. All right? That's one scenario. The other scenario, and this one is the more, I wouldn't necessarily say painful, but it's a scenario that people don't want, right? Because it's more sideways consolidation, right? You have a WXY for your wave 2, and this A, B, C waiting to complete is just your W. right? And then we're still waiting for a Y, an X and a Y to come in before continuation to the upside. So either way you hack it, right? Whether we get a sideways corrective wave 2 or we get a flat during our wave 2, we know that once we find the bottom, the inevitable result is continuation to the upside, with the exceptions of watching out for invalidations, right? For our 2 bullish scenarios. If those numbers are hit, then we have to reconsider the numbers. Prices. And really, here's the only thing that distinguishes both these bear scenarios, right? Whether you are just looking for a flat, right, an ABC in your flat, or the WXY, the only thing that distinguishes our price action, right, during the short term is where your wave C is going to terminate, right? The most common flat is an expanding one in which your C wave goes beyond the start of your A wave, right? And so if we have the most common scenario for your expanding flat, then the target for your C wave is at 98,152. Now, ideally, you do not want to come close to the 98,152 level, right? You would want this to probably terminate just sometime after you wave 8 here, sometime at like around 99,500, right? Because, right, your 1618 is at your bullish invalidation, right, for one of your accounts, right? So you don't want to hit that 1.618. So you want this, if we do get the more common expanding flat, to terminate just slightly after where your wave A ended, which is at $98,500, right? You do not want to make it down to this 1.618 because that is one of your invalidations, right? The next common flat is a running flat, right? In which your B wave does extend past where your A wave started, but your C wave terminates just before where your A wave ended, right? And so we do already have something that looks like a 5-wave structure here, right? And it seems like what price is wanting to do at the moment is it does want to sweep the low that we got here on the wick at 100,482. So ideally, right, if we do get the running flat scenario, you would terminate this wave 5 here at the 1.382 at 99,719 before eventually continuation to the upside. Right? So those are your bearish and bullish scenarios for Bitcoin. Again, right, even though we are taking a look at the bearish scenarios, unless your invalidations are hit, right, for our 2 bullish cases, then even during the bearish scenarios, where price goes a little bit lower than where people wanted to go, right, eventually your end result is continuation to the upside, right? The only thing that would cause me personally, and maybe Zenith has a different opinion, but the only thing that would cause me to flip bearish once again is if my invalidations are hit for my bullish scenarios. That is it. Okay. And that is where I will leave you folks for the TA.
Sounds good. Are there any other indicators that you want to talk about real quick, or should I just switch it over to my stuff?
Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a look at the RSI. And this was actually, thank you, Z. I was actually taking a look at this on the daily chart. But here's another thing that I want you guys to consider. All right. When we are pushing new all-time highs, what do we always say about new all-time highs or new highs in general? You want it to be accompanied by a good amount of volume. As you can see here, as price continued to push to new highs, we got an accompanying amount of volume, which is exactly what you want to see. Further, right? We have no divergence, in this case, bearish divergence, quite yet on the RSI, right? As we are pushing and pushing and pushing further into new all-time highs, we have continuation movement of the RSI to the upside, right? So you have accompanying volume, you have no divergence on the bearish divergence on the RSI, right? It's looking good on even lower time frames, which is what you want to see, which is what you want to observe when you are trying to predict with a reasonable degree of accuracy and precision what's going to happen within the next few days or so, right? Everything is basically a go for the bulls, right? So That's it for everything that I wanted to go over. So did you want to add
It-
anything else?
Oh,
The
that's
only-
it looks very orderly though. I'm just going to say it looks very orderly. Like it's not an extreme sell-off. This looks like a normal digestion, sideways action, building up a nice level position before it has its next level up. I get it. We have to wait to get confirmation, but it's a very orderly, consolidation. That's all I'm seeing right now.
That makes sense. I think at a glance, looking at it from this perspective, yeah, it definitely looks like it's a bit of a consolidation. But at the same time, I would not be surprised if we continue to move up from here. The reason that I say that is because today, actually, as the 20-day moving average just crossed back above the 50-day moving average, and current price is sitting well above both of those right now, and we're still head and shoulders above the 200-day moving average. So that's the indicator for me, showing that Bitcoin is still going to be moving towards the upside. If we come down and we retest those daily moving averages, that would lead me to believe that it could be shifting, and we might shift more towards that consolidation pattern that you're talking about. But as it stands right now, I think that for our cycle low, we just had a small dip where the 20 dipped below the 50-day, and now we are back above it. And it makes sense to see that we're going to continue to see more all-time highs out of this cycle. Based on overall shape of the 60-day cycles, I would not be surprised if we kind of chop up and to the right for a bit and then just make our final dip down before we might have a flat cycle or a down cycle, as we maybe make a 60-day cycle in early, mid, late March, somewhere in there, because that's what I'm looking at here now, because our last cycle low was on the 13th of January. So 60 days out from that, let's go ahead and
Mid-March. Mid-March, 14th, I believe.
March 14th. There you go. So if the middle of March is our flat 60-day cycle, then that means that based on just like probability of the distribution of normal distribution of cycle lengths, that pretty much takes it just all of March. March is the bell curve, so to speak. So I'm expecting a 60-day cycle low somewhere in there. That's what I'm looking at for sure. But yeah, momentum seems good. RSI looks like it's continuing to build as well, which is also excellent. And then volume. The volume is another good indicator that things are actually progressing and not just getting these like phantom or ghost wicks or weird outside influences, but this is true market action going on right now.
Correct.
Hey, Jay, do you mind bringing up the MACD on the chart and also the volume profile visible range or the VPVR?
Just a warning. I'm gonna bring up.
Oh,
the
not on the
right,
day.
and the VP.
Maybe the week.
Right. It's not gonna change whether I toggle on the daily or the weekly. Right. If I toggle on the weekly, you're gonna get point of controls. Right. The red bars here. Right. Point of controls.
Mhm.
So for example, here's a good example. Right. Just to kind of give you guys an insight on what Tracker was talking about, right? The red lines here, right? During the weekly timeframes, they're point of controls. They're just areas where the most amount of trading volume has occurred in this particular case, right? During the weekly, because we are looking at the weekly time frame. 1 second, guys. I got a customer at my door. Z, maybe go over Ethereum, then we can circle back. We'll kick afterwards.
That's fair.
Sure thing. Alrighty. Bitcoin chart. Yep, pretty much there. Tracker, was there anything else you wanted to look at?
I think the only thing that I'm always like to curious as is the 50, the 100, and the 200-day moving average. And then, of course, the volumes are fine. We looked at that, and maybe the MACD would be nice ones to accompany it. Those are typically, along with the ones you've already looked at, the RSI, and, of course, price action, and then the cycles. Those are typically the ones that are accompanied. Yeah, so you got a little cooling off. You've got some cooling off going on here. It looks like a little bit of, actually, that looks like positive divergence starting to form at the bottom here. What else did you have as far as, that's the MACD. We also want to see the, what was the other one I just stated? I really wanted to see.
The new one to me.
No, you could bring up, I guess that's fine for that. Are you on you can switch over to Ethereum. I know we beat up Bitcoin pretty good so far.
All right. So Ethereum, also another bit of a confirmation for the old 60-day cycle stuff, where we had that low at day 70 for Ethereum as well. And it just coincides with Bitcoin nicely and helps give some clarity on that determination. But as far as Ethereum goes, we are still below the moving averages, but we're still above the 200-day moving average, which is nice. So still below the 20, still below the 50. 20 is well below the 50 at this point, and we're going to need to see some upward action to really start get that going. But again, we have this candle right here in particular. A lot of wicks either way with these Ethereum candles, which is showing that price is moving pretty volatilely every day effectively. So it could go either way. Interesting note though is that volume candle for the day prior was actually larger on Ethereum. Could be some other reasons that we might talk about later for that one, but overall, it seems that Bitcoin is still getting the majority of the volume for driving price action going on with the majority of the market. But yeah, Ethereum's not looking too bad right now, sitting at about 3,200. And as long as it stays above that 3,000 level, I think we're going to have a very solid case for continuing the bull market or even shorter term bull cycles for Ethereum itself.
Yeah, the TAs look okay. The TAs look okay on that. The issue, though, is like we've talked about, I know before the show started, is the short interest is just insane for the Ethereum. And I know there's some talks right now going on with Vitalik and the foundation. People are getting pretty pissed off about the foundation dumping coins on people. They're not very happy about that. So there's definitely some rumors rumbling that there's going to be changing of some of the leaders on the Ethereum foundation. So I think that is greatly needed because right now they don't, since Vitalik stepped aside, it doesn't seem like they've had a solid leader since then. So I know it's a little bit off the TA side, but it's just another note to add to this. Reasoning why Ethereum can't seem to get going. And it is the massive short interest that's suppressing the Ethereum price right now.
Fair enough. Everything you're saying backs it up, but I just don't know if we have any sources to show what you're talking about there. So we'll have to find those and post them somewhere later on.
Sorry about that, guys. Business called.
All good.
Yeah. Do you guys want me to go over the volume profile really quickly, or should we move on?
No, we brought up we did bring out. You can bring up that again if you want to come over that again. I also wanted to look at the MACD and also the 20, the 50, and the 200-day moving average on Bitcoin. Zena just went over the Ethereum one for us right now.
Cool.
There you go. There's your volume profile. Is this the correct one?
I use a different one because it consolidates the data a little bit better. But that's certainly one you can use.
What's great about it, like I said, Jay was talking about, it's beautiful because it does consolidate. It shows you where all the bulls and the bears are battling, like where the main volume is coming. That helps you identify.
If you want to bring up my chart real quick, that way I can explain it a little bit better with the visual.
There you go.
Yeah. Cool. So for example, right here, when I have my volume profile turned on, in this case, it's on the daily. What this is really good, especially this particular profile, right? It shows you not only where the point of controls are, the point of controls, like I was saying earlier, are where the majority of the trading volume is happening throughout that time period, right? In this case, we have the daily profile up. What the green bars represent, right? Green up here and then green down here. They're what you would call your value area highs and value area lows. Once again, in this case, we're talking about the daily. The value area highs are where people tend to take profits. Value area lows are where people tend to take shots back into the market, right? Where they tend to buy and dollar cost average. So the reason why we pull this up is because it gives you a very good visual in terms of like potential horizontal support and resistance, right? For example, here's a very good profile on the day prior, right? You can see that during we're in the 4-hour chart, right? You could see exactly where all of these candles were getting rejected at, right? We were getting rejected at the point of control at $105,000, right? Close below rejection, right? Once again here, a close below after a rejection, right? An attempt to break out, rejection, right? Before we finally broke out for a bit, got rejected at the value area high, good profit taking opportunity. And then the following candle collapsed once again back down below the point of control and lost support at the value area low, right? Once again here, point of controls. You can see that our current candle, right? Our current candle on the daily is trying to make its way breaking below $100,000 once again. If you could see here on my chart, you have two daily points of controls at around between 99,650 and 99,380, right? So you have two daily points of controls very close to each other at those levels. And so if Bitcoin were to break below $100,000 again, you can expect that you're going to get some kind of support at that range because they were prior points of controls on the daily. You could apply the same thing if you want to take a look at it on the weekly. You could take a look at it on the monthly. You could break it down into your lower time frames, right? Usually I use the daily and the weekly volume profiles, just because, unless you're a day trader, you probably don't want to be messing around on the much lower time frames, right? But that's just a very easy and an easy visual for your potential horizontal support and resistance levels, right? So,
Jay, thanks for going over that.
Yeah,
of course.
good stuff. All right, gents, anything else with TA?
No, sir.
Alrighty, that being said, let's get into the main segment for tonight. So, promises made, promises kept, question mark. We have gone through and tried to compile the list of all our different promises from the Trump administration, or the now Trump administration, formerly the Trump campaign. So we came up with a handful, but we have these. We have a promise to protect self-custody rights, to oppose a federal central bank digital currency, commute the Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht's sentence, fire Gary Gensler, establish the United States as the global crypto leader, create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, set up a crypto advisory council, and appoint pro-crypto officials. If that sounds like a lot, I would argue it is. So, tell you what, gentlemen, let's go through this top to bottom.
Yeah.
I've picked out
one by one.
Yeah, I picked out a few of them that were identified to have more firm language around them during the time of the promises. So that's going to be stuff like using will and shall and like I will and stuff like that, as opposed to generally talking about ideas. So with that being said, let's talk about these ideas, how we think they can get done, and the probability that we think it's actually going to happen. So first off, how do we protect self-custody rights? This is one of the big ones where it was an actual promise. How do we feel about this one?
I don't know if they even know what that means. I mean, to be honest.
Meaning you keep your own property and then the government can't knock on your door and take it away from you. Right?
Oh, I know. We know what that means. I don't know if they know what that means is what I'm getting at, because, that goes back to the smart ass answer. Okay, you're telling me I can't remember seed phrases in my own head. I mean, like, are they going to allow that to happen?
So I think the simplest way for the folks at home to understand it, right, is self-custody, basically meaning, can you buy crypto on an exchange, and then can you take that crypto out of the exchange and put it in a cold storage device or a hot wallet, right, that like a MetaMask or a Phantom, right? Is this administration going to protect your ability to do those things, right? That's the simplest way you could think about it, right? I don't think that's such a big ask, right? It is your property, right? So you should be able to custody it however which way you want it to, right? One of the rights given to you by the United States. Oh, well, actually, these are called I forgot what they're called, right? But they're rights that exist before government, right? Your right to life, your right to liberty, your right to the pursuit of happiness, and your right to own property. Those are rights not given to you by the government. They are rights that exist outside of government. And
those are human rights. Yes.
Exactly. Well, I believe those would actually be what we call negative rights, which is it's your right. It's instead of saying someone shall provide a thing to you, it is saying that someone shall not deprive you of X thing, whether it's life, liberty, or property.
Yep. Exactly. So, right, it's like, it's a pretty simple ask. It's not anything outrageous. We practice it all the time here in the United States. So would it be easy to accomplish? Yeah, I think so. Would he get a lot of pushback if he flipped on it? You don't want to make an enemy of the crypto industry, man. This place is too big, it's too powerful, and you're not gonna have a good time. So I think it's possible, right? It's not such a big ask. That's my personal opinion.
I think Tracker, your smart aleck question in the beginning is it's a very good question though, which is like, how far do you want to take this? Because theoretically, you could talk about your self-custody rights. And by the way, I'm one of the folks where whenever we throw out the word rights, I take that very heavily and seriously. It's not like you can just declare that you have a right to healthcare or something, because that would be the opposite of a negative right, where you're now saying you owe me stuff.
Yep,
Why?
yep,
Because
yep.
I exist. All right, so self-custody rights. The idea that like you have the ability to do what you please with your property. Yeah, sure, you can hold Bitcoin in a wallet. Which DeFi apps can you use? Who can you send that to? Who can you transact with? Are you required to provide this information to anybody? The limiting principle here is going to be the big question about where that line gets drawn. Because I'll tell you right now, it's still not safe to go use Tornado Cash. Don't touch that thing. The U.S. government will be very unhappy if you do. So the question here is where are they going to draw the lines for the self-custody rights? I think providing basic language about providing self-custody rights providing them similar to like private property ownership, that seems very fair to me. But as far as your ability to interact with other crypto DeFi applications, I think that's going to be where the line gets drawn and where it gets muddied, which is that it is going to be something you can have, but what you can do with it is going to be up in the air. They definitely want you to have it, and I don't think they're definitely going to go the China route and just be like, Bitcoin's banned, no mining, no holding, get rid of it. It's like, not doing that. So it's the balancing of the extremes, and where's that line drawn? All right, on to number 2.
Oh, hold on. Just let me add to that. Oh, hold on. Let me add to this though, because I'm glad you cleared that up, Zenith. I would say this is where I'm going. You're right. Where can you interact? Now, for those that don't understand what Tornado Cash is, those are mixers. Mixers are basically, you can send coins to it and it scrambles it up, and then the output is whatever address you want to go to. Now they can't track who owns which crypto, and that's one thing that the governments have been fighting against. I mean, the founders right now are pretty much trying to go into jail. It's another thing that I think Trump has to step up, is try to protect some of those people for creating that software. But to go a little step further, why that is an issue is right now what they're talking about doing, at least under the current administration, was if you had if your wallet, self-custody wallet, has interacted with any of these types of mixers, then that wallet is almost deemed not allowed to be touched or not allowed to be off-ramped into the United States. That's a huge problem, because now you're saying you are not allowed to touch certain things. Well, you haven't regulated what I can and cannot do. So I think the biggest thing that's going to come out of all this is they should have much more clear rules of what you're allowed to do with it and what you're allowed to interact with and not interact with. I think that's the biggest thing that need to come away. No different than how you're on the internet today and what sites are considered to be illegal. If you go there, you can get your hand slapped pretty hard. I mean, there's reasons why certain black market things they don't want you to be interacting with. So I think it's going to be treated that way. And I think this is another reason why, like you said, why Trump has created this new task force to come in here, this new we'll call it a group of guys that are going to be the czars, the crypto czars, that are going to try to formulate what are the best rights here. And I think that's starting right now with them, and trying to ask the subject matter experts of crypto. And this is why if you saw inauguration, you saw a lot of powerful technology people were there to start picking their brains and figuring out, okay, what exactly is everybody wanting and understanding that. So yeah, I think more clarity is going to come out in explaining what the heck we're allowed to do here, because there is so much gray area. I don't think anybody even knows what you're allowed to hit. It's like hitting a landmine. But okay, appreciate that time.
Yeah, man. It's just I know they're probably going to draw the line of Tornado Cash. However, why don't you treat everything fairly? If you don't like the fact that you can't track stuff going through Tornado Cash, well, why are you using the US dollar? Right? It's
that's the most untrackable thing there is in the world is paper fiat.
Like, treat things fairly, man. Right? Like if you want to impose a rule on something, then you better treat everything the same way. That's it. Right? If we're going to have the rules, then apply it fairly, bro. That's all. It's not like I don't understand why they're hesitant for people using stuff like Tornado Cash, because people do use it for nefarious reasons. But we had this discussion long ago. Do not punish people for the potential actions of a few bad actors, right? and certainly do not punish like Roman Storm and Alexei, right? For creating an application, you're
Mhm.
punishing them by what a few bad actors did using their application, right? Like that's not a good way. Like it's not a good way to treat people, right? Like you're applying a standard based on the worst actors of the of the people using the tools, right? It's not a good way to go about it. Not a good way.
Yeah, Jay, to put a better analogy around it for everybody to easy understand, it'd be like the gun companies are going to jail for somebody using a gun to kill somebody. I mean, it's a
Correct.
perfect analogy. You can't punish people for building a technology and then punishing it for the users how they apply that technology. That's absolutely crazy to me. Now, we all know why those guys that were created the mixers were thrown into jail and punished and slapped, because it ultimately goes against the banking industry. It's a threat. And all this comes down to it is the banks run the show. They run the world. And if anybody wants to tell me differently, I disagree. Or whoever owns the banks, I should say. So I think ultimately it's going to come down to what the banks are willing to allow or work with, and that includes government regulation. That's what it's going to come down to. But yeah, that's the big fiat. I think it's one of these things, and I think that's why GG was put in place. Gary Gensler was put in place to stem the adoption phase as much as possible. He will be rewarded very well for his well-doing, guaranteed. So look for an upcoming $100,000 book advancement deal. I'm pretty sure around the corner for him. So he stopped the adoption. That allowed them to put things in place, because that allowed time for the banking industry to get their heads wrapped around what was going on. On a funny side note, I saw in a great documentary last night. It was called Mobsters and Bankers, and it was a fantastic documentary. It goes all the way back to the turn of the century, and how the mobsters would do the banking and how they had to hide their money. And it got into so much interesting stuff around the world, and it really opened your eyes. If you know how the real world works, it's an interesting concept, because the mobsters were always trying to look to how to hide money so they don't get taxed. So they're the ones that to basically leverage or manipulate the industry to try to hide money as much as possible. But then you have this gray line between mobsters, banksters, politicians. I mean, it even went as far as to the Vatican Bank. I mean, it was a fantastic documentary, and it was a historical key points that they were just, laying out for you, historical evolution of the banking industry. So it was phenomenal. I'd highly recommend it for somebody to really want to know what's going on with the banking industry and how we got here.
Cool. Alrighty, let's keep going down this list. Number 2, we have the promise to oppose a federal central bank digital currency. And again, this one came out with very firm and strong language. This is a shall statement saying that he shall oppose federal CBDCs and the proposition of such. Notably, what we're talking about here is a CBDC on the federal level. It has been pointed out that there are CBDC things issued, like Miami Coin is a thing, but that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something issued from the federal government at the federal level, similar to a digital dollar. Gentlemen, you want to start us off by explaining what the issues with the CBDC is?
Yeah, it's a paper trail to you. It's a paper trail to you, number one, right? So good luck on any sort of privacy, because a government issued CBDC would exist on the blockchain, right? Which means they have all of your information, not like your information is private to begin with, but you put something on the blockchain, it is there to be audited by everybody and everybody. There's no hiding anything when it exists on the blockchain. Number 2, if the government controls the CBDC, there's an on and an off switch. You talk about Big Brother. Let's say somebody you don't like gets into power. Let's say the most terrible person you could possibly imagine gets into power. Oh, he doesn't like you and your party? Off switch. Remember what happened with the truckers in Canada? Remember how even though they were peacefully protesting, right? They were just going through the city with their trucks. And guess what happened to their bank accounts? Frozen. Nobody could send them money. Right? Imagine that on a larger scale. That's what the CBDC gets you. I think this one isn't such a reach either, because even before Trump got on the train, remember, we've had multiple senators, right? For example, you spoke about Miami, Florida, for example, right? Their senator has already come out in severe opposition of CBDCs, and so even before Trump got on the train, right, you had already had other states, right, at the state local level being extremely opposed to something like this. So I don't think that's going to be a difficult thing to accomplish either, right? And really, who's gonna propose it?
That's true. I also gave this one a very high probability of being followed through upon, primarily because Donald Trump is the one who theoretically has the direct control or one of the actual steps to make this thing happen. But in this case, he's promising not to make it happen. And of course, I'm talking about the presidential veto, which is that if a federal CBDC was going to be created, it would have to come through Congress. And at the end of the day, the legislative process says that the president is the one who gets the final say on it, unless Congress decides to override of the veto, which would take a super majority to do, which, let's be honest, is not going to happen either. So again, unless you have a change in persona and character and ideology, I give this one like over a 90% chance of being upheld.
And here's another thing, since we're on the subject, right? Remember that Congress is overwhelmingly crypto positive. And so for a CBDC to be passed, remember, Congress has to draft the bill. After they draft the bill, it also has to get past the Senate, right? And if the Senate approves it, then it gets moved forward to the president's desk. Remember, this what happened with 121. It got through Congress because it got their approval, got through the Senate because it got their approval, and Mr. Popular vetoed it with a snap of his hand, right? Even if the very pro-crypto Congress drafts a bill for central bank digital currency, it gets through Congress, it gets through the Senate, it gets through Trump, he vetoes it. Again, right? Z mentioned it. You have to, if they want to overturn the veto of the president, it's 2/3, correct, from both Congress and the Senate.
Yes,
that's a very big ask.
That's a tall order.
That's a tall order, man. That's a very tall order, because even with something as bipartisan as SAB 121, they could not overturn the presidential veto. And that was a pretty easy pass through Congress and the Senate. So that's to overturn a presidential veto is a tall order.
True. The only caveat I'll give to what you just said there is that is the makeup of the legislative body pro-crypto? I would say, yeah, I think we've crossed the 50% threshold. Are they crypto literate, though? That's the other question. And can that be translated into a bill? So I understand that. I mean, the C-SPAN clips would argue that some of them are very not crypto literate, but I would hope that the people writing the bills and carrying them through the actual committees and subcommittees, those are the people that actually know what they're talking about and know how to write it properly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's fair, right? Like I said, I would argue that at the very minimum, from what we have seen from the Ag Committee, right, from the Financial Services Committee within Congress, on both sides, right, from both the Republicans and the Democrats, whatever you see, whenever you hear somebody pro crypto speak about crypto, right, they know what they're talking about, right? They make sense. Now, obviously, it's a bit more middle ground in the Senate, right? Like we have, well, now maybe not so much because we took control of the Senate, right? But when I hear people who talk about crypto-related topics in Congress, at least the pro-crypto people, you would have a very difficult time convincing me that at the very minimum they don't know like the basic principles and fundamentals of this industry, right? Because like we've watched a lot of their clips, man, and we've gone through hours and hours and hours worth of their meetings, both in the Ag Committee and the Financial Services Committee, and they make sense to me, which is why I threw my support around a lot of these around a lot of these pro crypto congressional candidates, because when I hear them speak, I'm looking for, are you BSing me? Or do you know what you're talking about?
Tracker, I think your background music's coming through, bud.
Yeah. And at the very minimum, like this, speaking for me personally, they've done a pretty damn good job of convincing me.
Fair enough. All right, final word, Tracker.
All right. Yeah, this one really hits home to me. This is the one, like, if people aren't aware of CBDCs, you need to understand it. This isn't some some boogeyman that's just made up or something like that. There are countries currently going through this right now. There are current countries right now. I would recommend people that aren't familiar with this, go look at the CBDCs that they have already imposed in certain African countries. Specifically, you have Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. The reason why those areas have been selected, the BIS and the IMF have been focusing on experimental trials with CBDCs in those areas. It's been pushed back heavily by the people. Scary stuff. I mean, they were told that basically last year that they could only take out 100, equivalent to like $100 American at ATM at a time. They were being forced to use CBDCs. Big pushback against a government there in Nigeria. They are very anti-government there. I could tell you that, but not trying to scare everybody, but just to let you know that is a real thing. It is a real threat. Now CBDCs, to answer your question on this one, the scary thing to me is, and this is why I really want to watch the administration closely, because this is the only thing that has me a little on the worried side. God, I don't want any of this to happen, but this is the one thing we have to pay very close attention to. Technology is great, but it always comes down to who's running, who's owning and controlling the technology. So I don't think whatever they come up with, it won't be CBDCs. It'll be something else. It'll be rebranded as something else. I mean, we all know FedNow went live. FedNow went live. That was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, right? So that's already went live. People aren't familiar with FedNow, I'd recommend you looking at it. And then as far as CBDCs, there would be an open network, closed network. So for the people who are deemed elites, they would be on a closed network. Open network, they would have it open to everybody, and that would be filtered through the things that Jay and Zenith already imposed. If you said something wrong, things like that. This is that Big Brother 1984 Hunger Game type scenario people are scared to death about, because once that technology was implemented, it would be a real thing and scare the hell out of people. There's been a big push over the last 5 to 7 years to move most of the data, especially in the United States, into major hubs where that data is controlled by the major tech companies for cloud computing. They're centralizing all this data. There's been some problems with those migrations, but once all that data is centralized, now you can have the network, now you have the access to the data, you could essentially move into this area. So this is something that's not going to go away. We have to keep a close eye on it. I think the short answer, though, I know I'm kind of rambling on, but I'm trying to give some background of how we're getting here, how we got here, and where it potentially could go. I could see them, I don't want this to be a Trojan horse or a honeypot, but my theory is, and I'm not saying it'll come true or not, but one thing that kind of worries me is, like, everybody is so pro-Trump and pro-crypto, everything's great, everything's fantastic. Could it be potential a big honeypot where eventually it sucks enough people in to believe in all this, and they say, yeah, this is great for us. We got to do this. This is a way to control illegal immigration. This is a way to control these problems. This is how we implement it. And we go that route. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is a CBDC after the fact. They told us it wasn't going to be a CBDC. This is something you got to be very careful on. So I think they will rebrand it if it's not a CBDC. And I think there'll be a push for this. Now, it also could come down to where maybe this next 4 years, it's going to go pro crypto. Everything's going to go great. And then maybe in the next election, president candidacy gets in place, maybe then that allows them to now put things in place because the rails have been greased, essentially. It's just one of those things. Keep a close eye on this. I don't think this administration is going to do anything like this, but you got to be very careful and watch what kind of rebranding that comes out of all this. That would be my two things. So not trying to be paranoid, but just keep your eyes open.
Fair enough. All right, on to the third major definitive promise. Donald Trump did say he would, using very strong language, that he would commute Ross Ulbricht's sentence, aka the founder of Silk Road. So for some clarity and just folks that don't know at home, Ross Ulbricht was arrested in 2013 and faced multiple charges related to his operation of Silk Road. In 2015, he was convicted on the following counts. 1, conspiracy to commit money laundering. 2, conspiracy to commit computer hacking. 3, conspiracy to traffic narcotics. 4, continuing criminal enterprise, often referred to as a kingpin in charge, or typically your charge reserved for leaders of criminal enterprises. And number 5, conspiracy to traffic in fraudulent documents, aka fake IDs and stuff like that. The major controversy surrounding this case was that, how about this? His sentence was he received a double life sentence without the possibility of parole plus 40 years. His severe sentence sparked widespread controversy and debate, some viewing it as disproportionate compared to other non-violent offenders or individuals involved in similar crimes. Yep. The three main points of the controversy were that the severity of the sentence is way too harsh, considering first-time offender and nonviolent. Number two is that during the sentencing, they brought up murder for hire allegations, but none of those allegations were actually formally alleged in court and were used to give the harder sentence. And then finally, there was obviously all the classic crypto First Amendment concerns about privacy and freedom regarding a free marketplace, the ability to say what you want, the ability to transact how you want, that kind of stuff. So how do we feel about this promise? If anything, I feel like this is another very high probability because it's either you do it or you don't. He's literally the guy with the pardon power, so makes sense.
Yep. Easy. I think it's also not a big ask. I think time spent is more than enough, right? I think I agree with you, Z. I think that
because we're at a decade now.
Yeah, the sentence does not fit the crime. The way that I feel about Ross is the same way that I felt about CZ, right? There is a certain amount of risk that you take being a pioneer. That's what Ross was. That's what the Silk Road was, right? And then they were trailblazers. They were inevitably going to break some rules. Now, is it fair that they serve some kind of punishment for breaking rules? Absolutely. As a trailblazer, it's also part and parcel of being that kind of guy, right? So you have to accept the potential consequences with your trailblazing. However, I think the punishment for CZ was appropriate, right? He got out what in like 4 months? 4 months for CZ. Now,
Only.
Yes. Did people use crypto? Did people use Binance? Did people use the Silk Road for some of these nefarious reasons? Absolutely, right? Absolutely. I don't think anybody could argue that. However, it goes back to the argument. You, especially in the case of Ross, right? You don't impose, right, the negative actions of the people who used his app, like his application, basically, right? And put that on him, right? Because he doesn't have control of people's actions. He's not God. All right. So should he have served some time? Should he have been punishment? Sure. Should it be a double life sentence plus 40 years without the opportunity of parole? No. No.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that entire analysis. It again is a thing where it's like there are standards and typical ways that we evaluate crimes and sentencing, and things like nonviolent, first-time offender. Those are very normal and very large aspects of a sentence as well. And to your point, again, like the idea that just because you make a product and someone else misuses it, does that mean it falls on you? No, but at a certain point, like theoretically, that's what the conspiracy charges are. Because remember, all the charges I read off there, they're all conspiracy to commit something. It's not you actually did a thing. It was you were conspiring with people to make it happen. So that's how that kind of charge gets applied to a marketplace style application like this one.
I think this is a low-hanging fruit. This is a no-brainer. He'll definitely pardon him. I mean, it's like, why not go ahead and pardon him? He's just going to win over more people by doing so. I'd like to see him not only pardon him, but give him a little bit of that Bitcoin that they confiscated from the Silk Road. You know, why not just give him a little, pay him back for being a trailblazer instead of punishing the kid who he was a kid when he got arrested. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah. Because could you fellows imagine, right? Imagine this, right? Like Ross was like definitely once in a generation kind of talent. You want people like that, right? Because they are pioneers. They are what push us forward. You want the Elon Musks. You want the Jeff Bezos, right? You want the Steve Jobs. They push us forward. They continuously push the boundaries over and over and over again. We would not have the benefits, the comforts that we enjoy today if it weren't for those kinds of people. If the message that you're trying to send to these kinds of geniuses, like these once in a lifetime, once in a generation talents, that you will be punished to the fullest extent of the law for what other people do with your products, why would you, like example, you were one of those people, what would potentially encourage you to innovate some more? Right? In a smaller microcosm, this was what the argument for fair regulation here in the United States for crypto was, right? If you're telling people right? The people who are pioneers in this final frontiers of finance, that if you try and attempt to do business here, that Gary Gensler will sick his dogs on you. Do you think anybody would be willing to do business here? The answer is no, right? Remember, Coinbase considered heavily moving their business outside of the United States when it got so bad. You don't want that kind of message, right? It's especially not towards the entrepreneurs, not to the pioneers, right? That's not the kind of message that you want to push forward.
I mean, just to add to that, I mean, look what's happened. I mean, most of that traffic activity for miners and all have gone over to Dubai, El Salvador, the tax havens. I mean, this is what the administration is all about. The administration is making it clear they want to try to keep this here. He's made it clear he wants to be the dominant country in the world around crypto. And right now, like we were talking about already, how it seems like England or London's trying to get in on it. They want to be the world one, and Trump's like, nah, I don't think so. We've already seen some discussions like that. So right now, everybody knows this technology is growing. It's only going to get larger. I think with AI adoption, it's only going to exacerbate this move even faster. So I think it would be silly for him not to go ahead and pardon him. Go ahead and pardon him, and then bring him into the discussion. Because if anything, you learn a lot about these early founders, these early guys that have been doing stuff, because that's like it's kind of like developers understanding machine language at the earlier times. You understand the nuances of things that people overlook now, that the tensions is in the details. That's all I'll say. So yeah, they'll pardon him without a question. I'll be shocked if they didn't. There'll be too much outrage.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Speaking of, Tether just went to El Salvador. I'm sure you guys have heard of that.
Of course it did. Why wouldn't it not go? Why wouldn't it go there? Think about it. You have unlimited, you have tax havens, you have unlimited supply of power if you need it. I mean, because of the geothermal from the volcanoes they have there in El Salvador, they have that. It's a haven. The only thing I would be concerned if I was, moving a business to any of these countries is that we've all talked about it. Are they honeypots? That's the only thing I would be concerned about. But that's the risk you have to take.
True. Alrighty, on to what is kind of a confusing promise from the probability standpoint, because I'm trying to figure out how to interpret this one. But the promise to fire Gary Gensler, you could either say he already made good on the promise, or it was taken away. The opportunity was taken away. But regardless, the outcome is still the same, which is that Gary Gensler is no longer the chairman of the SEC, as of today officially, by the way. So that is partly because Gary Gensler pulled the preemptive, you can't fire me, I quit. So he did that. But yes, Donald Trump did propose to fire Gary Gensler. I think that this one is going to be... there's a great irony to this, which is that this should not matter. But the unfortunate thing is that for the last 4 years, it has mattered tremendously, which is that crypto has largely been stymied by the efforts of Gary Gensler and the SEC. And Trump making good on this promise, replacing Gary Gensler with Paul Atkins, I think is going to be a great step forward for the industry overall. And honestly, even for the banking financial sector as well, which is just firm clarity and an SEC that is not just running rogue, just trying to play vigilante. Stability is what the markets have been craving. And I hope that's what we get under Donald Trump. So what do you guys think? Did he make good, or was it stolen from him?
Hey, Jay, I'll take this one real quick. I think he didn't steal it. I think when he made the announcement at the Bitcoin conference, he already let it clear that I'm firing you. This is your chance to get out before I fire you and embarrass you. So I think a lot of people are trying to leave now.
We lost your track.
Why they had. So if Trump if he wasn't elected, still there? You guys got me?
Yep, we got you.
Yep. All right, cool.
Yeah,
so basically what I'm saying, it's a cause and effect. If Trump doesn't get elected, this doesn't happen. So I think because he got elected, this is a cause and effect. So yes, essentially he did, not directly, but indirectly.
Yep. Yeah, and this one's already technically already happened. Gary Gensler announced way before the inauguration that he was leaving. Today he left. Case closed. Let's see what's in store for GG, man.
Very, very true. Already, we have that was the last affirmative, very strong language promise that was made. There are some other ones, which I do believe have already been made good on. The first one is the promise to set up a crypto advisory council. Guess what? That's what David Sachs is here for. So again, I think this one is already promises made, promises kept. The question about what is the role and purpose of the crypto advisory council, I think is still yet somewhat unfleshed out. But I'm curious to see their actual reports and the advice that the advisory council is going to give. What do you guys think about this one?
I mean, he's already started the process, right? I know Doge is kind of unofficial, but we know that Vivek Ramaswamy is in there, which means I mean, he's very pro crypto. You have David Sachs officially as the crypto czar. So if whoever David Sachs decides to put on his team, right, will determine just exactly in what light we place the crypto advisory council, right? And then obviously the what's the other thing that I was thinking about? Oh yes, the people that's going to be heading the SEC, right? Did we get confirmation yet who's going to replace Gary Gensler? I know that there were.
I'm pretty sure it's Paul.
Yeah, Paul Atkins. Yep. Like, did we get confirmation of that? I know Paul was like the front runner. So the fact that we have Paul Atkins, the fact that Caroline did not get resworn into the commissioner position, so I think it's a wait and see. He's off to a good start. We like the names that he's putting out there, right? We like the people that he already has on several of these positions. So how the rest of the cabinet gets filled, we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, he's already surrounded himself with all the major players and people that are very competent. Once again, it's real simple. If you don't know what's going on with this industry, you bring in the subject matter experts to tell you what's the way to go. And he's certainly already done that. So, I mean, at every level they brought in nothing but people who know what the hell they're doing. Not just strictly crypto, but also technology. Smees. This is already in motion. It's already going. I'm excited to see what they come up with, more or less.
Alrighty, that one, it's pretty easy to see. It's already going into effect. It dovetails into the one that I want to cover last, but we will keep moving on for now. So, two, what I think are lower probability promises. The first one is establish the U.S. as a global crypto leader. What does that mean exactly? I think this was made in a series of speeches that he gave, which he wants to ensure that the U.S. is the industry leader for crypto, and that instead of scaring off companies, we're trying to bring them back to this. So
this is easy.
So how does Donald Trump make good on this promise?
Well, this one's a little bit more difficult, right? Because he can't just presidential say where to go. Number one, what everybody's been talking about on crypto Twitter. Is he going to create a very attractive tax environment here for crypto holders, right? The promise was no long-term capital gains tax on crypto assets created here in the United States, with inroads for people who are not United States based to come here and do business here. We will have that option for you, right? That's a pretty big attraction point. It's where a lot of crypto companies go to El Salvador. It's why people go to Puerto Rico. It's why they go to Hong Kong, right? Because these are crypto Dubai, right? Bhutan, we found out recently. There's a reason why these industries are thriving when it comes to crypto, right? Because they're essentially not only tax havens, but to my second point, right? Create clear and concise regulatory frameworks for people to do business here, so the people who are already here and the people who want to start up businesses here are not creeping in the dark with, is it okay to do this? Is it okay to do that? Because if you do not have clear regulatory frameworks, if you don't have any guardrails in place, then what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with somebody like CZ, who he's like, you know what? I'm going to break stuff and then apologize later because I am not going to wait for you, U.S. government, for me to do business. Okay? So the tax promises, that's certainly a good thing. And then the obviously clear, concise, fair regulation around crypto, you're going to bring people back here home to the United States. I guarantee you.
For sure. The other tax incentive that was mentioned for this one is the idea that if you are a U.S.-based crypto company as well, there will be a reduced tax burden on you for that one. So that's why we covered a story last week, I believe, actually talking about how Ripple is already looking to have a lot of US based jobs. In fact, it's the vast majority of their open job offerings right now. It's stuff like that. And I agree with you, which is that I think there's a good bit that he can do kind of like almost secondary effect order wise, from appointing people like Paul Atkins, establishing the Crypto Advisory Council, and working with people in positions that he's able to fill himself. He can't really do the executive order stuff, but he can put people in place to run agencies that do have the mandate to do these things, whether it's a reinterpretation of the law or their statutes that are given to them and how they should run. That's going to be interesting and actually slightly different now, because it's going to cut against us from the determination of overturning Chevron deference with regards to that. Because now, remember, you can sue federal agencies for interpretation of their own statutes at this point now. So that's something that can be kept in mind. But outside of that, I think Donald Trump is going to have to work largely with Congress and try to come up with something. As it stands right now, I believe the proposal is that for the main Trump interests is they're trying to get one big beautiful bill, as they say, and try to get everything as much as they can in there.
That
understand the downside. Yeah, pretty much. Although this is less of a spending omnibus because Congress has been unable to balance a budget for over 2 decades at this point. But the point is that it's look, politically and tactically speaking, it is easier to get your objectives done with one large negotiated agreement. But also understand, you're opening the monkey's paw. You're making a deal with the devil here. You're asking for that golden fiddle, but you got to find out what the cost is. And there's going to be some stuff you don't like in that bill, but if you're willing to stomach it, that's how you can get your priorities through.
Yeah, there's going to be
as much
some
as
fat.
Yeah,
there's going to be some fat that you can't trim off.
True. As much as we would love to be purists and say that, no, if it's not exactly how you want it, don't make a deal. Donald Trump is literally the guy that wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. And part of that comes with negotiation. So please understand.
Yeah. Like, look, I'm gonna keep it simple. Keep it simple, right? If Donnie watches this, he's an entrepreneur, so this should resonate with him. As an entrepreneur, let me keep most of my damn money. That'd be very nice. Right? Number 2, leave me the hell alone, right? The less regulation, the better. A lot of entrepreneurs like that. And number 3, the rules that I do have to follow, can you please make them clear, concise, and fair? 1, 2, 3, right? Let me keep most of my money. Leave me the hell alone. And the rules that I have to follow, make sure clear, concise, fair. 1, 2, 3. Simple. On the entrepreneur's wish list, every single entrepreneur out there wants those things, right? I think we can extend that to the entrepreneurs in the crypto world.
Yeah. I mean, the tax cuts are coming. I mean, obviously they are going to come. They're going to help not only the crypto industry, but it'll help dramatically the small cap companies, which quote unquote risk on assets will do really well because small cap companies do very well under a tax friendly environment. So you're going to get that under him, just like you did originally when he was in office back in 2017. You're definitely going to get that. That's going to help. The other thing is, I have to ask the question, who's the competitors out there? You got Dubai, El Salvador, potentially China. China's economy is really looking bad. It's about to be nuked. I mean, he could actually come in and probably help China essentially because they're in bad shape. But my question is, like, who are the competitors out there that are going to take it? Most of their technology-based companies are still in the United States. So the infrastructure is all here. Everything's in place. This is just something the U.S. has just got to get out of its own way and answer those 3 questions that Jay stated. That's pretty much it. Once you do that, you essentially can say you are the global capital of the world. I mean, technology-wise, I'd say we are the global technology. Don't get me wrong. I get there's a lot of manufacturing overseas, but the IP and all the intelligence is being built mainly in the United States. Yes, there are other countries out there, but as far as the United States, it's definitely the big boy on the block when it comes to technology.
Everybody copies us, man.
Yeah. So I would say it's really up to the United States to get the hell out of the way. Trump, I think he's going to try to push us. You just have to get bills to get passed, things like that. That's the only hurdle you got.
True. Alrighty, on to the other, what I think is less likely, but still hopefully able to get it done, promise, which is promise to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The reason that I say this is one of the promises that's less likely to be kept is that this is not something directly within the president's control, because something like this will require legislation to come through. And that means that it has to start in the House, go through the Senate before it can even get to the president's desk, which means we got to get two bodies of Congress together to get this thing drafted up, relatively similar, and then sent over to the president. And that also assumes it even gets out of committee or subcommittee and onto the floor to begin with. So that's the reason I say this one. I will say, though, we're not the first country to propose or even adopt a Bitcoin strategic reserve. So it's not like it's completely pioneering something entirely new. There is already framework out there. There are already examples to argue for or against. So overall, is it a terrible promise? I don't think so. And I think there's a decent likelihood that it could happen, and that his willingness to make it happen is very high. That's not the issue on this one.
Well, so, okay, on the list of things that have the highest likelihood of occurring, yes, you're correct in saying that this probably is going to need a little bit more work, right? But like you also said, it's not like we're just creating something out of the blue with no precedent, right? Senator Lummis has already spearheaded this particular item. And so it's not like Donnie is going to have to sift through his cabinet and pick and choose, okay, who can I lean on this? Like, how is it going to look like? All of that stuff has already been laid out. Remember, when this was mentioned, Senator Lummis was already like, she was like, okay, that's the green light that I need. Gonna get on it, right? So she already has the framework in place of how they can get this accomplished. I think at the end of the day, it's just going to have to come down to, like you said, your willingness to do it. And it seems like he is very willing to do so. And then how high does it rank on your priorities list? Right? Because I don't think it would be so difficult, because it's not like you don't already have somebody that you can lean on to make it happen, right? And it's not like there isn't any precedence for it. All of those things already exist. So where do you rank order it? And the hierarchy of priorities and your willingness to do it.
It's true. Tracker, what you got?
I just sent you a link, Zine, if you want to bring it. It's a simple little website, but it does show you the countries that own the most Bitcoin. To me, if they wanted to, yes, they're going to have to iron out how this is going to look. What are they trying to accomplish and whatnot? But United States currently owns more Bitcoin. China is a second too. Then you got UK and Ukraine that are coming in, but really United States has obviously already shown that they want to be involved in this. Now they need more structure around it, like what Jay was discussing. What do you do with this? You know, and there is a national threat to the U.S. dollar, because just up until a few years ago, U.S. was the only thing that, any commodities were trading in were U.S. dollars. Well, that just changed with the Saudis, basically the BRIC countries. They're starting to trade things in non-U.S. dollars. That's the first time that this has happened in going back to since the United States was put on the world currency. So there is a threat to the United States. So are they going to take it seriously? Are they going to try to do something? Because these countries are starting to make moves. So they are going to have to structure what this is. But there is something here that they need to do. If they just sit back and like, oh, there's nothing to do here, I don't know what they're looking at, because the activities with the BRICS should be a threat to the United States if their true desires to stay in control.
Yeah, that is actually a pretty compelling argument there, Track, right? The fact that other countries are now threatening the status of the US dollar. I know we poke fun at them all the time, but the BRICS countries aren't, you don't turn your nose at them, right? They're superpowers for a reason. And they're not just approaching it lackadaisically. Right? They're executing, they have a plan and they're executing on it. And so if you did want to hedge against something like that, right, this one, right, where you have other nations and other currencies threatening the status of the US dollar, then why not hedge against that by protecting the US dollar with the best performing asset of all time, which is Bitcoin? Simple.
I think that's a compelling argument. It's just going to be a matter of people and their willingness to get it done and get it through Congress.
like you said, it's a hedging your bet. And right now, the crypto industry, including Bitcoin, is so small in comparison to the world money. This should be a very simple, low hanging fruit if they get ahead of it now. That to me, it's a no brainer. You hedge your bets, whether they believe in it or not. You have to protect everything. You have to hedge it. So that's the straight. It's that simple. And right now, it's not very expensive for them to do it.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? I like that this chart serves as a visual because look, I am not going to not going to sugarcoat it. Over the past few decades, China has been eating our lunch in several areas, right? When you take a look at exactly how much land they've tried to acquire in very resource-rich continents like Africa, right? How much their technology, in this case
Including the
TikTok,
United States,
right, has been ingrained into the minds of the future generations of this nation, right? We've been behind the 8 ball in a few big ticket items, and at least from what this chart is showing me, it seems like the USA is ahead fairly well in China in terms of how much Bitcoin that they hold. Let's not give this one up, right? Let's not give this one up.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I'll take it a step further, like you just said, Jay. It's an interesting concept. Like point you brought up. That is, China has been investing around the world, including the United States. They've been gobbling up all types of land here in
They
the
have a
United
lot of land
States,
here.
as well as
Correct.
farms and resources. That's what I'm saying. In the United States, they have literally taken over major farms, livestock farms, including potential important land areas. I mean, to me, that is a major national security problem they have on their hands. Like, I haven't yet to see anybody talk about that or address that issue.
Yeah, gosh, national security concerns are there plenty out there. This could be another one of them if you want to make that argument. So many angles to attack it.
Yep. Yeah, let's not give this one up, gang. This seems like an easy, it's like, oh, right? Land is an asset. Attention is an asset. Bitcoin, let's not give this asset up over to the Chinese, man. And that's coming from a Chinaman as well. Not
the only push.
The
main argument of pushback that I expect for this one is going to be the U.S. dollar argument. It's going to be a pushback from the banking industry, and it's going to be a pushback from the stance of a promotion of Bitcoin is a weakening of the U.S. dollar. And in order to secure the hegemony of the United States and its money supply, we cannot allow this. It's like, all right, if you want to go that route, but the way you've been treating the dollar lately doesn't really help your argument. So
yeah, it doesn't help your argument, right? You know what threatens the power of the U.S. dollar? The fact that the federal government printed over 50% of circulating supply within the last 4 years, that certainly threatens the power of the U.S. dollar, right? Because how can you expect people to take it seriously when you can print it into infinity? How can you expect people to treat it seriously when the buying capital of your citizens, you not only do you disrespect the value of their dollar, but you're disrespecting their time and their labor. How can you expect anybody like that to take you seriously as a currency? You can't, right? We have tons of examples of nations inflating their currencies into infinity. I mean, look what happened with Venezuela. Right? A lot of crypto folks with stories to share about their travels from Venezuela to other countries because of what was happening there, what was happening with the government and the currency. Okay, so you know what protects the dollar? Well, you back it up with not just the best performing asset of all time, but an asset that is sound money. Sound money principles that cannot be corrupted. It's Bitcoin.
That'd be interesting to back the U.S. dollar by Bitcoin. That'd be pretty awesome. If they, because they got off in 72 on the gold standard, they somehow were to start supporting it back. I think that's a stretch, of course, but something like that would be interesting. It'd be pretty funny to see U.S. dollar actually get backed by something instead of nothing. I mean, that'd be a novel idea, right? But
would be.
Yeah.
True. All right, gentlemen, we have one final promise that Trump can make good on. And I personally think he's already starting to make good on it, as we talked about previously, but he's promised to appoint pro crypto officials. I left this one for last because it covers some of the other stuff, but it also covers one of the major questions about the Trump administration coming up, which is, did Trump learn from the first administration? Which is that I think there were a lot of staffing problems early on, which is he thought he had good people. They turned out not to be the people that he thought they were. Yep. And here we are for round 2, and we're going to make sure that the same stuff doesn't happen when it comes to appointing pro-crypto people. So, gentlemen, what do we think? Has Trump learned the lesson? Are we actually going to get true pro-crypto people, or are we going to get some Trojan horses?
Absolutely. Again, speaking from an entrepreneurial standpoint, speaking from a businessman standpoint, you usually when you transition, like let's keep it simple. Let's say you are managing a hotel and you are tasked with transitioning into a new property. What usually happens is you bring your people with you, right? Because you vetted these people, you know their ability, right? Their competencies, right? How much they produce. You can trust them. That's what you do. I think first administration, I think this was actually Donald Trump being a bit more humble. He's like, look, I know nothing of politics, so let me listen to the advice of people who have been in this game much longer than I do. And the unfortunate reality is you inevitably ended up with people who backstabbed him, right? And so second time around, I think he's going to approach it like how he would approach it whenever he's taking over a different enterprise, right? I'm going to bring my people in. Simple as that. And so simple answer is yes. I think he has learned from the lesson. And the fact that like the people that we're seeing him appoint out, even outside of the crypto space, you know what? This guy, that gal, they're all in on Trump. They're Trump maxis the same way that Michael Saylor is a Bitcoin maxi.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there were some seriously powerful people he had in those rooms around him, especially the technology industry. I mean, he had the who's in technology industry, whether they agreed with him or not. At least he's still surrounding himself with these major players. And I think that's the smartest area to have is the technology sector. Those guys are already so many steps ahead of the government, regulation, everything that's going on out there. And if they don't have answers, they've got friends or people in other networks where they can pull those people in immediately and have access to it. So surrounding himself with people that understand all this, that can speed up the process, that can network, to figure out these issues. Yeah, he's already done it. Like you saw it today. I mean, you literally saw his people coming in and who he's surrounding himself with. It's going to be interesting because if you look at it, he's surrounding himself with a lot less politicians and more people that understand the issues or the subject matters that they're trying to tackle. So that's the interesting thing that I think, because like you don't need more politicians. You need more people that know what the hell they're talking about.
Yep. Yeah, it's like instead of a team full of administrators, right? This is the gripe that I have with university, is that the reason why it's so expensive is because their administrative overhead is so high. I'm thinking of the current Trump team in that aspect, right? Instead of a team full of administrative do nothings, he's filled his room with people who are, all right, I have a track record of doing and getting results. Simple. That's the kind of people that you want on your team, man. You don't want you don't want the people on your team that sit in the room and talk all the time. No, like we can talk, but then what's the action? Right? What's the plan? How do you execute? Did you produce results? These are the people that you want on your team. And it seems like this time around, that's exactly who he has on his team.
I would agree. I think that based on the initial picks of cabinet and important high-level folks, it seems that Trump has really learned from the first time around, and that the people he's picking now, it's a great coalition. It's the MAGA coalition that all the voters wanted in the first place, but it's also people that understand the fight for what it is. It's people that understand the reality behind the situation we're in and the reality of the process they have to go through to fix it. So in particular, I was very, very impressed with the Pete Hegseth confirmation hearings and just all the body of work that Pete has put out over the years, whether it's his books, the podcast or appearances, or his work on Fox News. Like, the guy understands the fight for what it is, and that's why he's going to be the Secretary of Defense, because he understands how to fix the military. And I think that Paul Atkins is another great example, which is Paul is someone who understands the SEC after working there for, almost like 2 decades, I want to say.
Yep.
And he's also a person that has gone through the belly of the beast of the crypto world, and he knows what it looks like. He knows the reality of it too. He knows it's not just all sunflower and roses hanging out with Michael Saylor on a yacht. It's like, no, you're talking to the DeFi folks. You're talking to some of the disenfranchised, the unempowered, and the people that really have gotten screwed over by the banking system. So it's all these things that lead me to believe the people we're seeing are going to be good picks. Obviously, I think there's going to be a few that might slip through the cracks, but overall, I think it's going very well. And I think one of the main challenges might just be to tame the populism. It's still a very important aspect for sure, but just not let it take over and run wild, because the new converts to your side of the fight is always a great thing, but you can't let them lead. You got to give the people who understand what they're doing and that they've shown that they've been there for a while. So a little bit, I am calling out Elon Musk on this one, which is like, glad that you're over on this side of the aisle. Understand that you were voting the other way about a decade ago, and that's only 2 election cycles. So it's a bit quick theoretically, but at the same time, happy to have you and really appreciate the support and help. But please understand that we're not here to necessarily kick out the entire old guard, but definitely try to figure out who are the good folks and get those people in the positions that they need to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, you leverage people for what they're good at, right? I am like, I might leverage Elon Musk if I wanted to know how to build an electric car, launch a rocket in space that's recyclable, or how to rank #1 in Diablo, right? I might leverage Elon Musk there, but am I going to leverage Elon Musk's knowledge on, I don't know, dating? Maybe not. On, like, I don't know, name a subject that he's not good at, although that might be a very hard subject to find. But you don't ask Elon Musk to help you run everything. You identify the things that he's good at, and then you put him in that position, right? And the things that he's not good at, like, why would you waste his effort on things that he's not good at, right? Where not only there's probably going to be a steep learning curve, #1, he has a higher probability of messing it up, right? So you're absolutely correct, Zenith. Yeah, glad to have Elon here on the other side of the aisle. Put him and let him do things that he's good at, and then everything else, don't bug him with it, right? Because you're just gonna mess it up.
Agreed.
On a
Track,
completely
final
side
word's
note,
yours.
just on a completely side note, I just think it's hilarious. Like, Joe Rogan is like Mr. Interview right now. Like, he's getting everybody there is in the world. I'm waiting for him to do an interview with North Korea. You know, I mean, he's doing everybody. It's crazy how many people he's interviewed.
That's true,
just
but
think
I would say Joe Rogan has been that guy for at least 5 years at this point.
he has, but it's what I'm saying. It's interesting because Trump obviously did an interview with him right before, you know, the inauguration. He got Musk again. I guess what I'm saying is there's something there. There's an interesting way of bringing people together that I feel like there's something there, networking and understanding people, because you get a chance to see somebody more raw on those interviews. And like Zuckerberg just did one on there. Of course, Musk just did one on there. I don't know. There's something in that community that I just find it interesting. I'm not making anything up. I know it's a completely odd side note that I'm bringing up. I just thought it was funny how he seems to be interviewing all these major players and bringing them in that, I don't know, maybe he's, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. I just find it very fascinating, but
I don't
I'll leave it at
think
that.
it's completely off topic at all, Track. Because remember, you could call it the icing on the cake, but the icing on the cake for this election was Trump's appearance in Joe Rogan's podcast. Right? If it wasn't the icing or the cherry on top, it certainly was one of the cherries on top. Right?
Well, I feel like
Agreed.
people have given up on mainstream media and the major networks because it's so biased. And I think at
Well,
least
yeah.
here you have somebody interviewing with fair questions and going into everything and interviewing from people from all different types of backgrounds and political affiliation. So I think it's very fascinating. It's a fair level thing, and I think we are moving into a world where maybe this is an enlightening opportunity, because I know Trump's also stated he's going to go after the major broadcast networks because they get tax funding to help those networks, yet they're very biased. So you can't be that way and still get federal funding to help support your network. So that's another thing that I think will be interesting to see. I think what I'm saying is that you could see a landscape change here on how we get our information and how things start moving forward. I guess that's kind of where I'm alluding to.
Very, very true. All right, gentlemen. I think we are coming to about the end of our stream, so I want to go around the horn and get any final thoughts out while we can. Mr. J, what do you have?
I am excited to, short and sweet of it, I'm excited for what's to come in 2025. I actually think it was fortunate that Mr. Donald Trump didn't win the last election and he won this election, because he's the president during our post-halving year tail end of the bull market. So I'm pretty damn happy about that, right? Pretty damn happy about that. I like everything that's developing in the crypto space right now. I like the things that I'm seeing on the chart. Speaking of, we just did sweep that local low. So flat confirmed, but where it goes from here, yet to be determined. But I'm bullish, man. Just overall bullish for what's to come in 2025. Like we couldn't have asked for a better setup.
Optimism. Glad to hear it made a comeback. All right, Tracker, what you got?
It's much the same. I think this is going to be a fun time. I think stay here to get your information with us, because I think we're going to keep a tight leash on what's going on here. So users need to start probably tuning into us, because Jay's doing a good job. Zenith, you're doing a good job on the T analysis. One of these things it's not going to be a straight up. You're going to go up. You're going to get face ripping rallies. You're going to get face ripping, drops. I think regulation now is behind us. I think it's going to be more discovering of how this new world of crypto is going to be. It's going to be more laid out in that aspect. So it's not going to be all the landmines with the SEC and everything we've had to deal with in the past, the FTX debacles and all this other stuff. Like, it's going to be a little more clean sailing. So it's going to be more of a opportunity. And I think the exciting part about this is going to see what companies and what start to leverage this new technology and what will come to flourish under this new regulation over the next 4 years. You're going to see new disruptors coming in. I know people are talking about AI, but now you start tying AI with blockchain technology. You start building these infrastructures that aren't very sexy to the consumer. They could care less about this stuff. But once these pieces get put in place, these disruptive technologies that people will start to use day to day could start to come to fruition. So I think that's going to be the exciting thing that could come out of this. Of course, we're all trying to make gains here, but I think from the technology standpoint, that's one area that I think is going to be fascinating time to be living in.
I like it. I think I would agree with both you gentlemen. We have good times and we have fascinating times coming up ahead. Notice the one thing I'm not saying is they're not going to be volatile, though, because it's going to be a good time in the bull run. But at the same time, like Tracker mentioned, it goes up and it goes down, by the way. But right now it mostly goes up, and it goes up pretty big. So just try not to lose your cool. Try to keep your head. And I think we're going to be all right, especially in the crypto segment. As far as the United States stuff goes, I think we're set up very well. I think this could be the opportunity for the golden age of the United States, as they're talking about. I personally am a little bit of a fan of regaining control of the Panama Canal and looking at making another land purchase up there with Greenland. I mean, geothermal stuff, I think it's pretty cool. And it might help with the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve if people want to start mining it as well through the United States government. So other than that, folks, gentlemen, where can the folks find you, and what do we got going on in the near future?
You can find me on the Telegram. As always, we do a lot of. I gotta stop calling them emergency meetings, because we have them on a regular basis now. So you can find me there creating content. Yeah, creating content for the Telegram, keeping the folks updated to the best of my abilities. And so if you like what we do, you're gonna find a lot of value in the Telegram as well. As far as what we got going on in the future, we're probably gonna be on stream again Wednesday or Friday, and then another one on Sunday, and everything else in between. You can find me at Instagram on agent_J Schroth, or on X at _P90hex. We know that time is your most valuable asset, and so we do appreciate that you spend some of that time here with us. Make sure to like the damn video, comment, subscribe, jump in the Telegram, and see you next time. Track?
For sure.
Just saying. Telegram Tuesday, that's coming on tomorrow. That's part of the DGen side. you'll catch us here on Mondays, and just keep plugging in with us, guys. We got a lot of stuff cooking. It's going to be an exciting month. This month is going to be exciting because we're going to be starting to launch some things here pretty soon. So keep your eyes open, and we will definitely be letting you guys know. Look forward to it.
Absolutely, folks. Keep those eyes peeled for any announcements coming up in January. We have some stuff planned for you. Outside of that, though, I am going to close off with a few comments we got. RH Max stopped by, saying, let's go. Good to see you, buddy. I had a great show with you on Thursday, I believe it was. And last but not least, we have Moonpilled Rational Optics. He says, what's up, gentlemen? See you guys on Wednesday. See you Wednesday, my man. That is the game plan as it stands. Outside of the now formerly the streams formerly known as emergency meetings happening on Tuesdays. So, folks, I'm Zenith. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ZenithDI. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and walking the block with us. So we're trying to all navigate some digital finance together. It's going to be a crazy run, and I think it's being a crazy 2025. But overall, I think we're going to come out very, very well. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that all of you have a fantastic evening, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.